What's up friends, today we are going to be taking a look at how to actually set up the DaVega X on your board. After that we'll go for a ride and I'll take you through some of my favorite features and what it's like to actually have a DaVega on your board. Before we power on the board and start the actual setup here, I just want to mention that all of these instructions are roughly laid out on the DaVega website, so I'll put that URL here, and if you have other questions feel free to leave them in the comments or look at the website and then leave a comment. So just want to make sure you guys knew that was available. But right now we'll go ahead and get into all of the menus on the DaVega and I'll show you what each of them do, and we'll go through and set this up. Now, as soon as we get onto here, you'll realize that there's actually a little bit of data on it because I went for a ride earlier and I just hadn't set it up yet. So we're going to erase everything and we're going to start brand new and go through each of the steps that it will take for you to set up your own DaVega. All right, so the first thing we need to do is obviously power on the board. So we'll go ahead and turn that on and you'll see the screen coming up here as it powers on. And we've got our connection. So the first thing you're going to want to do is notice the buttons at the top. You got an up arrow, a down arrow, and then the menu button. So the menu button, we're going to go ahead and click that first, and we'll just go ahead and do a quick reset session, and then we'll go back into the menu again, and we're going to go into miscellaneous. And for me, like I said, I really just didn't set this up properly yet, so I want everything reset on here. So we're going to go down in the miscellaneous settings all the way down to reset lifetime data, and we'll just click that. All right, now we'll go ahead and restart it just real quick. Probably not necessary, but all right, now we can get into actually setting stuff up. If we go back to the home screen, can go through here and see that there is no data here besides the stuff that is being displayed live. Now that all the data is clear, the DaVega is ready to set up. For me, obviously for you, if it's brand new, you won't have anything pre-existing. So we'll go ahead and go into the menu, and the first thing we're going to want to do is scroll down to Wi-Fi, and we'll hit enter. And what you're going to do is enter your network SSID here. You'll see mine is blacked out because I don't want to reveal that information. And the next thing you need to do is put in your password. Now, this is going to be a time-consuming process because each of the characters will have to be put in manually, but you only have to do it one time, so just bite the bullet and go ahead and do it. So we're going to go ahead and set up my Wi-Fi password right now. All right, so I've gone ahead and entered my Wi-Fi information, and as you can see, my password is extremely long, so it's good to know that long ones can work. We're going to go ahead and test the connection. And we have success. So we'll go ahead and press another button. We'll go ahead and go back into the settings. So now the first thing I'm going to do is check on update and backup. And we're going to go ahead and look at the firmware versions that are available. So there's actually a lot of different versions available, and I'm going to update this a little bit later, I think, to the latest 4.09 version because it adds some functionality with the LLT Smart BMS, and I definitely want to be able to access that. And it's actually super easy to update the firmware. You just go in there and you pick whichever one you want and you update to it. The latest version of the firmware will be firmware 5 pretty soon. I think you need to plug it into your computer to update that. So if anyone has trouble with that, let me know and I can make a video on that as well. All right, now that our Wi-Fi is set up, we're going to go ahead and get on to some more of the interesting stuff on this DaVega. So the next thing we're going to do is go into the units and change those over to the Imperial system. I actually already did this, but there's two options in your unit systems and you can select Imperial or Metric. Obviously I want Imperial because I am American. And the temperature units though, I'm going to leave in Celsius because that is the most familiar temperature readout for me when it comes to electric longboard stuff. The next thing we're going to do is go into the parts lifespan. Now this is one of the coolest features, I think, for sure on the DaVega. There's only a couple things out there. The Rubagachi, maybe the new Meter Pro can, and maybe the Infinity Logger. I'm not 100% sure on those, but it's very rare to actually be able to continuously log your parts lifespan over an extended period of time, especially through restarting your board, turning it on and off, charging it, and all those kinds of things. For this, we've got a bunch of default things in here: motors, wheels, belts, VESCs, your battery, and then I added this custom one here called tires_K for the tires that I've got on here right now. So we'll go ahead and add another one right now. Let me think. Maybe we'll do tires_M because I have a set of MBS tires that I also want to keep track of. Now, keep in mind that anything you put in this parts lifespan will start tracking it from the time that you put it in, and it'll just continuously track from there on. I'm not sure if there's a way to like pause the tracking, like for example if you switch the tires out or not. So I might end up deleting this entry, but I'll enter it right now for you guys just so you can see. So we're going to go ahead and scroll all the way down to the backspace and delete that, and then we'll just go ahead and type in tires. T-I-R-E-S, and then underscore is going to be way in the characters section. I don't know if there's a space in here anywhere. That might be a space. Ah, perfect. Space bar is between the numbers and the characters. And then I guess we'll go back and do a capital M. And then we might as well just put in the rest, MBS. And then we'll go all the way back and hit enter. Now we've got the tires MBS set up on here, so now when we go back into our parts lifespan, you'll see that those are listed there at the bottom. And like I said, I don't know if there's a way to pause these. Maybe that would be a good feature to suggest to Jan actually, so I'll ask him about that and see if that is a thing that we could get integrated. Alright, so parts lifespan is really cool, but we also need to set up the other important parts, and one of those is the drive. So we're going to go ahead and set that up next. Alright, so we'll go ahead and set up the drive now, and this part is interesting because I have a gear drive, so that makes it a little bit more difficult to, say, count the teeth. On the Board Dynamics gear drive page, there are 3 different ratios you can get, and he will tell you exactly what the gearing is if you ask him. And for me, I know by what someone else said that my gearing is the 5.2 ratio, which is 83 teeth on the motor, or sorry, on the wheel gear, and then 16 teeth on the motor gear. So in order to do that, we're just going to go ahead and go into motor pulley teeth. We're going to turn that up to 16. And then we'll go to wheel pulley teeth and turn that all the way up to 83. And that will allow us to have an accurate readout of our speed. And as you can see here, I've already put in my wheel diameter, which is 200 millimeters, and it's the same process. You just hit enter on it and turn it to whatever you need. Our motors do have temperature sensors as they're the Flip Sky battle hardened. The motor pulse 14 is pretty standard. It's the same for mine. And we are in two-wheel drive. And the two-wheel drive part allows the DaVega to list out the current from each of the motors, including the peak current from each motor, the peak regen current from each motor, and even the peak battery from each side of the VESC and all that information, which is super awesome to see on the screen. Next, we're going to set up the battery. The battery is pretty easy to set up. There's only a few options here. The cells in series is 12. We have a 12S battery on here. Right now, I actually have a lithium polymer battery for jumping and doing tricks, so we're going to go ahead and set that to LiPo. And the battery capacity, we have much less than 12,000 milliamp hours, so we're going to go ahead and turn this down to the 5,000 that we currently have in this pack. The acceleration that Jan has put into the software on the DaVega is pretty great. I honestly couldn't really ask for more. It makes it really easy to get accurate numbers and get to them quickly when you need to. So the usable capacity is interesting. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously to you, but when you drain down a lithium polymer or a lithium ion battery, you're actually using only a partial bit of the total true capacity of the cell, because you have to cut it off at a certain voltage to protect the health of the cell. So I'm probably just going to leave this at 80%. I don't really care that much about the actual milliamp hours drained from my pack. I more just look at the voltage and the little bar on the screen. The voltage source from VESC here is interesting as well. The DaVega is actually compatible with, I think, both the Flexi BMS and the, I think it's called DIBI or DB or something BMS. Those communicate over CAN, I believe, and I don't have either of those, so we're just going to leave it on VESC. But this new version of the firmware on the DaVega actually has access to the Bluetooth on the LLT BMS, which I do have, but it's not installed yet. So I might make a little short on YouTube of how I set that up later, but that'll be what I'll change when I get around to doing that. We're going to go ahead and talk about the update and backup tab on the DaVega next. So let's get right into that. There was a little bit of confusion here, and I actually already recorded the part talking about the firmware earlier in the video. So right now we're just going to go ahead and talk about the backup feature. The backup portion is super useful, and it lets you back up your data to the cloud in the case of all of your lifetime data and stuff like that. So I do not have any backups currently. I'm not actually sure exactly what service this uses, but I think it just works through Jan's software. So we're not going to back it up right now because there's nothing to back up. But it looks like there's an auto backup every 6 miles, but obviously that's not going to work unless you're connected to Wi-Fi. So I guess if you want to make sure that your DaVega backs up when you get home, maybe you just leave it on for a couple minutes or manually back it up. I think it'll be fine because my board is usually on when I come home. So that is the update and firmware tab, and we're just going to go back to the home screen and see if there's anything else for us to configure. So we went through the parts lifespan, the drive, the battery, the units. We did Wi-Fi at the very beginning. We went through the update and backup, and now miscellaneous. There's a couple other things that are useful in here. You can change your display rotation in case you want to mount your DaVega turned 90 degrees. You can set an initial distance, which would mean like your DaVega was installed at the board after this many miles. You can change the screen delay, which I believe is when you set the home screen on auto circulate, it'll leave each screen on there for 5 seconds. Now, writing screen main is pretty cool because you can pick what the large number is that's on the main screen. For me, I do like to have the speed there, but you can have your battery amps, motor amps, speed and battery, or speed and motor, which is pretty cool. So we'll leave it at speed there. The voltage display, you can change between the pack total and the average cell. I like to have the pack total, so we'll leave it on that. Resetting your session on charge is interesting. I don't have a BMS plugged into here yet, but I guess the DaVega would know when the board is charging and reset your actual session time, so it doesn't think you recharged all of that during your ride. And then you have reset lifetime data, and I already did that to clear all of the incorrect data that I collected on my first ride. Now, going back to the home screen, that's pretty much all you've got. And it feels silly to say that because there's a ton of features on here. But that's pretty much all you have to set up, and you guys should be good to go for riding with the DaVega. Before we move on, I just wanted to go through some of the screens that you can actually show on your home screen. This one is the one that I leave on here most of the time. You've got your battery voltage, your trip miles, your MOSFET temperature, your watt hours per mile, and your range by default. And then as soon as you start moving, it'll switch to your current speed. Now, if we just press the down arrow, we'll switch to the next screen, which has a ton of data on it. I'm not going to read all this out, but you can see all of the different values here. Some that are really cool are max battery amps, max motor amps, especially split across the two sides. Really useful to know. You have your MOSFET temperatures on both sides of the ESC and your motor temperature. Going down again, you have a whole different set of readouts: watt hours per mile, watt hours in and out, your average miles an hour, your max speed, how long the DaVega has been on, very interesting, how long your ride has been. And then you've got even more on the next screen. And finally, we're back to the first one. And there's an option to actually cycle through these screens, but I only really want to look at these screens when I'm stopped anyway, so I'm just going to leave it on this main home screen, which looks really cool, especially with the quick access battery meter at the bottom. As you can see, my battery is at 43.7 volts right now, which is pretty low for LiPos, so I do need to charge my board up. And at the bottom, you can see that we're in the orange/red. And that means it's time for me to charge up this board before I go out and do tricks again. We're gonna go ahead and take this out on a ride here in a minute, but I just wanted to talk about a few of my favorite features. I've kind of mentioned them as we've gone through the actual setup of the DaVega, but I wanted to mention them again just to point out how awesome they are. First thing is the lifetime of your parts. And I think this is super cool to just keep track of how long each part has been on your board through all of your restarts of your board, because I keep track of everything in my meter data, in my meter app on my daily, but I have no way of actually knowing if I've captured every single mile that's traveled. And the best part about this is you don't have to open an app or anything like that in order for it to track it properly. So I think that's my first favorite feature. My second favorite thing on the DaVega is more of a overall feature set thing rather than a specific exact capability. Now, there are ways of getting data from your VESC to you, and most of those use your phone through an app and a Bluetooth connection to your ESC. And that's usually in your pocket, and you've got gloves on when you're riding, and it's honestly just kind of annoying to have to pull your phone out to check something very quickly. Now, sometimes you don't necessarily need to see all those things while you're riding, but sometimes, especially when you're testing components, it's very useful to just be able to see your motor amps, your battery amps, or your speed just at a quick glance. And that's something that the DaVega does really well. So this is kind of my second favorite feature set, and you'll see on the screen that I switched over to one of the more dedicated detail screens. And on this one, we've got our trip miles, our range, our average miles per hour, got our minimum and maximum motor amps and battery amps. And I just think it's super awesome to have all this stuff at my fingertips, and especially just at the quick press of a button. I can even see my watt hours per mile on my ride and how much battery I think I'll have left and all that. And honestly, this is just my favorite part of the DaVega, is just having all this information at my fingertips. I always like to look at my meter logs after my rides, but being able to see this all in real time is pretty awesome. Well, that brings me to the end of my features overview and setup for the DaVega. So now we're going to go ahead and go on a ride. I'll give you guys some in-ride footage and probably do a little bit of voiceover on top of that. See you there. All right, guys, so we are out here with the DaVega X for our first recorded ride. I have been testing the DaVega X a little bit, but I've only really had it going for some jump sessions and nothing really that constitutes a full-on ride. So today we're taking it out to get a look at how useful it is on a day-to-day ride. We're gonna ride over to a park and draw a design on the ground. My forum member friends will know what I'm talking about there. But anyways, one of the things that I like about the DaVega is that it's just always there on your board. You don't ever have to turn it on. You don't have to tell it to start recording your ride. You don't have to remember to do anything really. It's just there. You can look down, you can see your remaining mileage, you can see your speed, and pretty much just a everyday usability improvement with your board. So I'm not going to talk too much over this. I'm just going to kind of give you guys some riding footage of me riding around with the DaVega, and then I'll probably record a little bit more once I get to my destination. Alright guys, so I just noticed something while I was riding that seemed a little weird, so I stopped and tried to fix it, but it still hasn't really fixed itself. On the main screen of the DaVega, you're supposed to have the ability for it to switch from range to speed after a set delay of seconds that you can change in the settings. And for me, I have it set to 2 seconds. So right now on the screen, it really should be showing the miles per hour that I'm going, but it's still only showing the range left. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. Maybe it's a bug. I had my motor teeth set to 16 and my wheel teeth set to 83, which is how it works with my gear drive. But it's possible that there's an error in the code for gear drives. I honestly don't know. I'm gonna have to talk to Jan about it and see if I can get it figured out, but for now, no speed display, which is unfortunate, but hopefully next time I take it out, I'll be able to get that fixed. And you know, sometimes these are just things that happen on the first ride, but I'm confident that with a few minutes of help from Jan that we'll be able to figure it out. So nevertheless, the rest of the stats seem to be working properly. It seems that I've traveled about a mile. My watt hours per mile seems around accurate, and really the only thing that's weird is the speed. It said my average speed was like 13,000 miles an hour, and that makes absolutely 0 sense. So yeah, I'm gonna try and get that fixed, and we'll just keep on riding and just appreciate it, I guess.
Alright, so after a conversation with Jan over Telegram, I seem to have found the fix for this issue. When I set up my VESC originally on this board, I set it up in Smart Reverse, and I eventually ended up changing that to be full current forwards and reverse so I could go full speed in both directions. Now on this board, I'm using the Hoyt Puck eSkate remote, and on that remote you can switch the right-hand and left-handed mode, which switches the forwards and reverse directions. It seems that when I set up my full current mode, I set it up in the reverse mode on the remote, and the fix for this was pretty simple. all I had to do was go into VESC tool, invert both of the motors on the actual VESC, and then go to the remote and hit the reverse key again. Now, I haven't actually tested out this fix yet on the road, but it seems to be working fine on the bench, and I'm pretty sure it will be the same for anyone else that has this issue. So let me know in the comments if you need help figuring out this issue, but I seem to have gotten it fixed, so that's great.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed some of that riding footage of the DaVega in action. I really enjoyed getting to use this so far, and I really like how it came out installed on my board. It looks super clean, the screen's easy to see, and it's just a lot of fun to use. I always like having extra data from my rides, and for me this makes my rides even more fun. Now, should you buy a DaVega? Well, I think the answer is definitely yes. If you have a VESC compatible or VESC based ESC in your board, this DaVega will work perfectly with that. And I think it's a great accessory for anybody's board. Obviously, provided you've got room on your board and you've got a little bit of room in your budget for it. One of the things that kind of held me off from getting this originally was that I just didn't know how to assemble it. Now, if I had actually taken a look at Jan's guides on his website, I'm sure I would have been fine. But hopefully my guide for you guys of the features and the assembly has been super useful, and it will encourage more of you to go purchase these DaVegas and support Jan. He's a super kind of individual that really believes in his platform and puts a lot of work into it. I have full faith that he's going to keep on supporting the program with new firmware updates, adding new features, and being compatible with Meter Pro CAN and other bits of hardware like that. Anyways, if you guys have any questions at all about how to set this up or features or firmware updates or any of that, feel free to leave it in the comments below or head over to the forum page where we discuss everything about the DaVega, including new firmware updates and new features. Anyways, thanks for staying all the way to the end of the video, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and if you like this video, go ahead and like it. Stay safe, keep on riding, and peace out.